A new bookstore has opened in Winnipeg. It opened last Thursday in St. James, but this one sells horror and thriller books. It's called Raven's End Books. It's being called the first horror-centric bookshop in our city. So why only horror? Chelsea McKee Trenchard's going to answer that. She says the popularity of horror books is on the rise. She says her shop is a judgment-free space for folks to explore their spooky side. Good morning.
Morning.
I love that you're here to talk about horror books and you're wearing like the cutest t-shirt in the universe.
It's just cats with glasses, and it just felt right. Just felt like, well, our whole vibe is like spooky cozy.
I like that. I like that. Well, you're repping the cozy. Why horror books? Like, what do you love about the genre yourself?
Well, I just love being scared, like in a safe space. Like, I mean, going out in real life is already scary, but getting snuggly up and like having people like encounter ghosts or murderers, and it's really fun. Just a nice little raised heart rate, but then you can put it down and go back to cats or good food or anything like that. It's just a really fun genre. And also, I just think it's one of the best genres out there. The authors today are so great at writing emotional heart. They're able to tackle like some of the more deeper issues without making it feel really heavy, and it's just a fantastically fun genre.
It's funny because I enjoy a good sort of spooky, mysterious book. I don't know how far in the horror I could go, but I enjoy that feeling you're talking about, that unease. I don't enjoy it when I'm watching a movie, but in a book, I don't know why. There's something different. Where did you see the need for this? Like, I was mentioning how unique this is in Winnipeg. Tell me a bit about that.
So we are actually only the second horror bookstore in Canada and the first in Winnipeg, but it's also a really unrecognized genre, or it's unrecognized when you go to other bookstores where they'll have a horror section, but it tends to be predominantly the bigger names like Stephen King. And so for people who are fans like me, who want to maybe find more niche books or different options, it's really challenging. So they have to either order it online or borrow it from friends or go to conventions. So I really wanted to create a community space where they can come meet other fans, and then they could also just be able to ask for those different tropes, those unique things they were wanting, and be able to get it from a local person who somewhat knows what they're talking about. Not all the way.
Scary books, audiobooks as well?
Yeah, we do have an audiobook link where you could go through Libro FM, and then we get a portion of that. They support independent booksellers.
Have you, how long have you wanted to do this? Open a store of your own like this?
I think with any book nerd, it's always kind of in the back of their mind, and it was something I wanted to do when I hit retirement. But then I had a professional big change up last year, and I decided, why wait? Let's do it now. So my sister-in-law and I just started talking about how we wanted there to be a horror shop. So in the last year, it really got going.
Now, I understand one of your favorite sort of types of books is a good haunted house book.
I love it.
Why? And how do you describe what makes a good haunted house book?
Not being able to leave. Like, being trapped either by a mortgage or by family not believing you.
The mortgage book may be less scary, except maybe
a little more real. But I just love when you kind of have to face that terror. You can't leave, and you have to sit in the unease, and you can't even sleep and recharge. You have to exist. Like, something might breathe on your neck when you're in bed, or move things around, or lock doors when you're trying to get out. And it's just a fantastic spooky genre.
I can read a book like that if my husband's home and in the house and it's like Saturday morning. I'm still a bit of a lightweight. Were you always reading books like of this nature since you were, younger? Has it always been something that you just gravitated toward and love?
I think. Okay, so I always read Sweet Valley High when I was a kid, but I then would pair it with Fear Street. And I'm still kind of the same, where I'll read Emily Harris and then immediately turn to horror. Okay. But no, Fear Street, Goosebumps, anything. When I was a kid, it wasn't until I was in university that I was more open to books that didn't involve murder.
So people think of gore and slasher types. How many subcategories? I'm naming what I'm thinking, but how many subcategories are there in a horror book genre? And would people be surprised?
People would absolutely be surprised. That's one of the things that I've been told when people have been coming to the store. They're not aware of all the different themes that can come with horror. And gore is absolutely the number one thing that people think of. So when somebody says, I'm not into horror, what they're really usually meaning is, I'm not into gore, which totally fair. But there's Lovecraft horror. There's...
What's that?
Just H.P. Lovecraft. So anything where it might have... maybe cults,
Got it.
eldritch, things like that.
Yep.
There's eco horror, which is things to do with the environment.
Disasters, yeah.
Yep, family horror. There's just human horror, which might be like a murderer coming after you. But there's lots of different ones. So I like to say that most gore is horror, but most horror isn't gore.
What do you hear from people that also love this like you do about why the genre is so popular? Like we identified that feeling of unease, but what else beyond that in the writing do people sort of gravitate toward?
Well, like I said before, I think a lot of it can be that they're able to tackle some bigger issues without making it feel heavy. Like a great example is the September House that just came out this year. It's about this house that's really only haunted 1 month of the year, but then it also talks a lot about abusive relationships and family and kind of fractured relationships, and it was fantastically done. But I think also with horror, it's so long been a safe haven for kind of the outcasts of society, and now in recent years, as we've started to acknowledge and recognize that there's other identities and walks of life, they've brought that horror genre with them. And so it's starting to just become more widely known and through different channels. So
Do you think people were worried about enjoying it before, maybe? Like, or somehow that, it would be taboo to admit that you enjoyed a gory book?
Absolutely. There's definitely a stigma with liking horror. And I encountered that a lot when I was just starting the store. Because people will think you're weird, gothic, in the bad way, and just that there's something wrong with you. Even if you look on Facebook and you look up horror, this was as recent as like a year ago for me, they'll ask you if you need mental health support.
Really?
Yeah.
So people just don't extend it into like it being your choice of what you're reading and a piece of art or piece of literature or piece of
it's just not
writing.
recognized as something with value. It's seeming as like a very pulpish thing that you don't need to take seriously.
Well, what would you recommend to someone who wants to try out the horror genre?
Well, it depends based on what that person's interested in. So if they came into the store, we'd give them obviously a more unique recommendation. But I think for someone coming in, if they're just wanting to dip their toe in, going with something like Lone Women by Victor LaValle, Whale Fall by Daniel Krauss, would be some really great options where they're really eerie, but they still are connected to real life things and zero gore.
Well, this is the time of year where we need to snuggle in with good books.
Exactly.
So. Well, you've obviously hit onto something here because I read, and tell me if this is correct, that somebody went by, saw your store name and said, oh, I slammed my brakes on. There goes my paycheck, because they were so happy to see your store.
Exactly. They came in just before we closed on Saturday and they said, I didn't even know you guys existed. I needed to come in. And they just had the best time looking through all the books. And they were very similar that they wanted to get into horror books because they had really liked movies. So they were really excited to have a space where they could kind of do that.
Good luck with your store and your new business in Winnipeg. A pleasure to have you in early this morning. And I'll have to get some recommendations from you as I snuggle in this winter myself with some books.
Thanks so much.
Take care. That's Chelsea McKee-Trenchard in studio this morning, the owner of Ravens and Books. You can check them out at 1859 Portage Avenue. So 1859 Portage Avenue here in Winnipeg.
Hi.
Thank you for watching the CBC Manitoba YouTube channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe. For the latest breaking news and top stories, download the CBC News app.